Hi, my name is Alex Herbst,
I'm Naren Advani.
And I'm Aaron Inglee.
and this is our final project that will be better than Gabe and Paige's. The three tasks we try to accomplish are 1. How poverty affects the crime rate. 2. To address whether the majority of victims in the South from our original dataset fall between the ages of 18 and 34. And 3. To compare the mortality rate of 18 to 34-year-olds in the 10 states with the largest population sizes versus the 10 states with the smallest population sizes from the original dataset.
The one task we chose to isolate was the effect of poverty on crime rates, but more on that later. The first task we chose to address was whether the majority of victims in the South from our original dataset fell between the ages of 18 and 34. Our null hypothesis was that most victims in the South are between the ages of 18 and 34, while our alternative hypothesis was that most victims in the South are not in the age range of 18 and 34. In order to test this hypothesis, we needed to find the percentage of deaths between the ages of 18 and 34 in the South from our original dataset. This was done by adding the number of total deaths between the ages of 18 and 34 for each state considered to be in the South and dividing that by the number of total deaths of those states. The number of deaths between the ages of 18 and 34 was 2,628, while the total deaths from the southern states was 5,876. Using simple division, we concluded that the victims between the ages of 18 and 34 accounted for 45% of the total deaths of the South. We use this percentage as a baseline in order to conduct a statistical analysis on the data to find its p-value of 1.0, and using the significance value of 0.05, we concluded that the p-value was in the rejection region, and therefore we reject our null hypothesis and accept our alternative hypothesis, stating that the majority of victims from the South were in fact not between the age range of 18 to 34.
For hypothesis 2, we sought to test if larger states had higher mortality rates from ages 18 to 34, or if smaller states had higher mortality rates from this age range. For the larger states, we chose to include California, Texas, New York, Florida, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, and New Jersey. For the smaller states, we chose to include Maine, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Montana, Delaware, South Dakota, Alaska, North Dakota, Washington, D.C., Vermont, and Wyoming. The number of victims between the ages of 18 and 34 in the larger states ended up being 4,236, while the number of victims in the smaller states ended up being 262. These numbers were divided by the total populations per group, respectively. For the larger states, we divided 4,236 by 8,907, and for the smaller states, we divided 262 by 450. After calculation, we discovered that 48% of deaths in the larger states were within the 18 to 34 age range, while 58% of deaths in the smaller states were within the desired age range. Therefore, we reject the null and accept the alternative hypothesis because the percentages of mortality are significantly lower in states with larger population sizes at 48%, in contrast to states with smaller population sizes at 58%.
Based on the data titled States Data for 2008 through 2010, we can see that the poorer one is, the more likely he or she is to be affiliated with some sort of criminal activity. We conducted a linear regression analysis on this data and concluded its regression value to be 0.366. When a regression value is close to 1, there is a strong positive correlation. When regression value is close to -1, it represents a strong negative correlation, and when it is close to 0, there is little or no correlation. Therefore, since the regression value is 0.366, there is a weak positive correlation between poverty and crime. As we mentioned earlier on, we decided to explore deeper on this subject. We agree that there is a positive correlation between poverty and crime, but that the correlation is much stronger than what the data shows. After doing research, we came across a study conducted by the Bureau of Justice Statistics. The study shows that people in poor households at or below the federal poverty level, which is 39.8 per 1,000 people, had more than double the rate of violent victimization as persons in high-income households, which is 16.9 per 1,000 people. The data also tells us people in poor households had a higher rate of violence involving a firearm, which is 3.5 per 1,000 people, compared to persons above the federal poverty rate, which is 0.8 per 1,000 people. This data tells us that we were correct by proving that the poorer one is, there is a higher chance that person will in fact be involved in a crime.
To conclude, we examined Hypothesis 1 by analyzing the number of victims recorded in the data set in the southern region of the United States, specifically between the ages of 18 and 34. After calculation, we determined that only 45% of victims in the South were between the ages of 18 and 34. This is fairly below what we consider to be a majority, which was somewhere significantly upwards of 50%. In addition, using a significance level of 0.05, we determined that the p-value for victims of this age range in the South was 1.0. Given the corresponding critical value of 1.645, the p-value was significantly less than this value, allowing us to correctly reject the null hypothesis. Therefore, we were able to successfully conclude that most victims in the South were not within the age range of 18 and 34.
In regards to Hypothesis 2, we took the 10 largest states by population, added up all deaths between 18 and 34, then divided them by the total deaths of those same 10 states to get what percentage of deaths were between the 18 to 34-year-old range. We then repeated those same steps with the 10 smallest states by population. By doing this, we found that in the 10 largest states, 48% of all deaths were accounted for in the 18 to 34-year-old range, while in the 10 smallest states, 58% of deaths occurred between the 18 to 34-year-old range. Therefore, we rejected our null hypothesis and accepted our alternate hypothesis, concluding that in states with smaller population sizes, a higher percentage of deaths occurred between the ages of 18 to 34 than in states with larger population sizes.
It can be seen that poverty is linked back to the original data set due to the correlation between poverty and crime rates. As stated before, poverty often leads to crime, and in the U.S., many people between the ages of 18 and 34 live below the poverty line. In fact, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, as much as 13.5% of the population of the United States lives below the poverty line, out of which every 1 in 5 millennial aged 18 to 34 lives under that very line. Due to the fact that such a huge number of people between the ages of 18 and 34 live under the poverty line, many of them get pulled into different forms of criminal activity. Often, these activities lead to their death or the death of others, most commonly in scenarios that also include the police. So to restate, it is concluded that as poverty increases, crime rates increase, which causes millennials between the ages of 18 and 34 to engage in more criminal activity and fatal encounters with the police.